Hey, what's up you guys? It's Nikita Lene. I'm back with another video. And as you guys saw in the title, today I want to talk to you guys about how floating as a nurse has helped me to be a better travel nurse. So I posted a video, or I should say I created a video probably about 6-7 months ago talking about floating, and it's called Floating 101. Now, at the time, I didn't have an editor, so I did not get it edited and posted, but you will definitely see this video be posted before you see this video that I'm posting now. So if you have not already watched that video, please go back and watch it. I have like this bright neon shirt on. You definitely can't miss it. But that video goes over how to float. Now this video is for pretty much anybody who is interested in floating and going to other units, trying new things, and maybe even eventually that turning into you doing travel nursing. So if you are interested in more information about how floating helped me in my transition to becoming a travel nurse, please stick around for more information. All right, so briefly, how I started floating. My hospital system that I worked for back in Dallas, they had 5 or 6, I can never really remember how many, but 5 or 6 different hospitals, sister locations within the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Around the holidays, for some reason, our census always seemed to drop, and I'm about my money. I got a family to feed. I got Christmas gifts to buy. So I really wanted to find out a way for me to supplement my income when my hours were being cut. At one point they were being cut really, really low, and I was starting to dip into my PTO just to have a full regular paycheck, which for me was not normal because I was working overtime prior to that, and I was used to those overtime checks. So from that to having like 1 or 2 shifts a week was a huge difference for me. I had heard some of my coworkers talking about being float nurses or working in the float pool, and of course I was very inquisitive and I wanted to know how they managed to do this, where they floated to, and get the full tea on everything. So one of my coworkers, Jay, shout out to Jay, he's one of the sweetest people I know. He kind of gave me the scoop on how he became a float pool nurse and the pay difference, and my eyes were like huge. I had no idea this was even an option. So what I started doing is I wasn't eligible to be necessarily a float pool nurse, but I did have the ability to float to some of the other locations. So what I did was started going to some of the sister locations just to pick up extra shifts here and there. And it made a huge difference. I really enjoyed working at these other locations, meeting other healthcare professionals and networking, as well as just seeing how other hospitals do things. And even though it's the same hospital system per se, every hospital still does things differently. So that was really exciting for me, and I really enjoyed it. Outside of that, the networking portion gave me a lot of really good references. Just being able to work around other healthcare professionals, I feel like definitely elevated me as a nurse, because anybody that you work around as a healthcare professional, you can learn from them, whether it be good or bad, and you take the good and you tuck it away in your toolbox, and it's good things for you to learn to become a better nurse. So I really feel like working floating to all these different locations really opened my eyes and increased my skill level as a nurse. On top of that, when you're thrown into a completely different environment, you really have to use your good communication skills. You have to be the most professional that you have ever been before, because you're in a new environment. You're meeting new people, you're working with new people. Not just working with new people, but healthcare is a team sport. So you are working beside these people to help your patients get better. So working as a float nurse, just floating around to all these different locations, picking up shifts here and there, definitely elevated my game as a whole. Now, on top of those things that I previously mentioned, I would like to say that it was great for me to see different patients, different, diagnoses, different outcomes. Everything that you see, you kind of tuck away in your toolbox. And the more experiences you have in healthcare, the better healthcare care professional you can be. The more opportunities to advocate for your patients, the better advocate you become. So I definitely enjoy taking care of different patients and working around a lot of different type of healthcare professionals. It definitely elevated me as a whole. I would say I feel like I grew as a nurse, just pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. Now, when I initially started floating, I was just picking up shifts working on their med-surg unit because I hadn't really completed my ICU training yet at our hospital, even though I was working in our ICU already. Eventually, their supervisor over there was like, well, if you can work in their ICU, you can work in our ICU. And so I started working in their ICU as well. I had finished the training and my orientation of ICU at my hospital, and so I really just started working like anywhere there were shifts. Sometimes I would work med-surg, sometimes I would work ICU. Wherever there were shifts, if I felt like I wanted to work those shifts, I would do that. Eventually, the census picked back up at my hospital location, and sometimes I would end up working Sunday, Monday, Tuesday at my hospital, and I would pick up Wednesday and Thursday at the other hospitals. I loved the flexibility of being able to make my own schedule, being able to pick up extra money here and there whenever I wanted it. And additionally, I'd made friends at the other location. So that was always a plus, being able to link up with some of the other nurses and RTs that I really enjoyed working with, and linking my schedule to theirs and being able to make extra money and really enjoying working at that facility. I definitely saw the pros and cons of working at that facility, and sometimes I would really look forward to my shifts there more than I would at my own job sometimes, just because of like the teamwork and the cohesiveness that I felt at that location in their ICU with certain team members. I really enjoyed it. So I definitely would say it was a good experience overall. Now, there are multiple levels when it comes to floating, okay? So you can start off floating with like baby steps. For example, in our hospital, when I first started working as a nurse, I worked on the med-surg floor, and I would float up to the ICU occasionally. This expanded my horizons as far as my skills and my abilities because I was taking care of a higher level of acuity of patients without actually working on the ICU floor full time. So that was a great start to floating. Now, I would say after you do that, you could even work within your hospital and maybe go to another sister facility. I know in Dallas-Fort Worth area, most of the hospital systems like Methodist and the bigger hospital systems, they all have at least 3 to 4 hospital locations. So if you want to venture out a little bit further, you can always go to another location and work there if you're interested in that. Or even if you're willing to float to another unit that's a little bit more challenging, you can try your hand at that as well. Lastly, when it comes to floating, there's opportunities with agency nursing. Now, I realized after I took my job in California that some states call it something different. In California, it's called registry, but it's pretty much the same thing as agency. And what you do is you sign up and you do training to work in a hospital system. And whenever they have shifts available, they'll notify you that there are shifts, and you can pick up shifts at working at any of their locations. In Texas, they call this agency work, and you pretty much just float essentially between all of the hospitals within that hospital system. Originally, before I was going to start travel nursing, I actually started the paperwork and the training to do agency work. And the reason I wanted to do agency is, once again, the flexibility. I wanted to be able to make my own schedule, especially being a single mom and an entrepreneur. There are some weeks that are busier than others where I don't want to work a full, 3 days a week, or I may not want my 3 days in a week to be in a row, or I have a specific day I don't want to work. If I'm working agency, I'm making my own schedule by literally individually picking the days I feel like I want to work. So I really enjoyed the idea of that. So that's originally what I was planning to do, is just do agency work full time. And I loved the flexibility of it, on top of the fact that usually when you work agency, you make more money than you would if you make staff. And it's because you have to have the flexibility of being able to go to any facility that they have a shift open at. You pop in, you do your job to the best of your ability that day. You're reliable, you're dependable, you're a team member, and then you go. And you really have to be flexible. You have to be willing to just get in there and get the job done without complaints, without being problematic. So that's why they're willing to pay you extra, because you are literally dropping in. Sometimes at the last minute. Sometimes they will notify you at the last minute, hey, we have a shift open, can you be there in an hour, can you be there in 2 hours? So they're paying you for that flexibility and to be able to pop in and to be a valuable asset to their team at the drop of a dime. So let's jump into some of the ways that floating helped me as a travel nurse. Number one, I would say being able to hit the ground running. Now, when you work agency or you are floating, the amount of training that you get or the amount of preparation that you get is usually like maybe a quick little 30-minute walk around the unit. They tell you the codes to all the doors or how to access this, where stuff is, and your shift starts. So you really have to be very independent. You have to be a self-starter. You have to be able to figure stuff out. And if you don't have that go-getter attitude where you're going to figure stuff out, then maybe it's not necessarily for you. Because a lot of times, I will say, when I first started floating, I literally got a 10-minute tour of the unit, where everything is. These are all the codes. Here's a computer, try and jump on and access everything. Here's access to the Pyxis. All right, goodbye, good luck. I have an issue that I need to put out. A fire I have to put out over here. So that was my orientation on the unit. And thank God the hospital that I was floating to was just a sister facility. So they use the same charting system that we did, although they did chart some things different. What else? Their Pyxis was completely different than the one that we had at our hospital, so that took a little bit of learning and figuring out. But you literally just have to figure it out, But these are the things that help you to be a stronger nurse, and they're going to help you when it comes to travel nursing, because as a travel nurse, you usually get 1 day of orientation. I think that's what I got. When I did my first travel assignment, we had 1 day in the classroom, 1 day on the unit. And with this, my assignment in LA, I got 2 days, 1 day off the unit of just epic training, and then 2 days on the unit with a preceptor, which was complete trash and really didn't help. But anyways, that's a whole different story for a whole different video, right? So the fact that you're able to adapt, quickly learn, ask questions if you have questions, and figure stuff out is definitely going to help you be good with floating as well as becoming a travel nurse. So the next thing is being a team player. So you as a nurse, you have to know your role as a team player, okay? Anywhere you go, you know your role, but you have to be able to jump into situations, to be able to jump in and help team members, to be able to jump into a code and to take directions well. All of that all comes into play, because when you are floating or when you're a travel nurse, you are literally in addition to a team. And a lot of teams, a lot of these people, they've worked together for years. So you may not exactly know how you fit in or where you fit in, but you have to understand that you have to be flexible and you have to be moldable. You have to be able to jump into any situation and say, okay, where do you need me? What do you need help with? What can I help with? And to be a nice, clear, crisp communicator where you're able to ask someone what they need help with, and you're able to clearly communicate that you're there to help them, and you're able to jump in. You'll see this as soon as you start to float, you're going to realize, like, this is kind of awkward. Your first code with the team is a little off. Your first encounters are when you have to help people, but you really have to push yourself out of your comfort zone and really push your communication skills and ask clear-cut questions. First of all, introducing yourself. Hi, my name's Nikita. I'm one of the travel registered nurses here. I recognize that you need help or that you have an admission coming. What can I help you with? Is there anything I can go grab for you? Is there anything I can do to make this situation go a little bit smoother? Do you need me to go get the RSI kit? Whatever the situation is, you have to jump in and ask clear-cut questions. And sometimes you're not even able to ask questions. Sometimes you just have to read the room, read the situation, and jump in, or go grab what needs to be grabbed. You see a patient they even mention intubation, you're gonna go grab what they need to intubate. Number one, because you made yourself aware of where everything is, right? And you're literally just going to go grab what's needed. That's all a part of being a team member. And when I tell you, this is so instrumental, like this is going to be the difference in whether you actually fit in well with the team or not, because healthcare is a team sport, whether you want to believe it or not. Nurses and healthcare professionals who perfect the art of being a part of a team but also working individually, those are the team members that people want to work with, okay? They want to know that you're able to hold your own, but you're also able to communicate and ask for help. But they also want to know that if they need something, if something's going down, they can look at you and tell you, hey, can you go run and grab this? Hey, can you jump in and do compressions? Hey, can you do, and you're willing to jump in and be a part of the team. It's so instrumental. It's definitely one of the top skills as a healthcare professional that you have to learn. And you have to put your feelings to the side in those situations, and you just have to jump in and do it, because it's going to make a huge difference. Now, something that I mentioned briefly earlier is being able to work independently. Finding the balance of working independently as a nurse and being able to be a part of the team. Now, when I say working independently, I mean you're able to come in, you can take care of your patient load and you can take care of your patients. But if you have a question you're not afraid to ask, you ask great direct questions, which is, using good communication, clear-cut communication, and that if you do need help, you're able to direct, you're able to delegate. Like, let's say, for example, it's your patient that's coding. You're going to need to use your delegation skills and tell people what you need help with. Hey, I need someone to grab this. Hey, I need someone to do this. You have to be able to be a nice, clear-cut communicator. But at the same time, when it comes to the independence, you have to know how to take care of your patients, figuring out where the stuff is that they need and how to clearly take care of them on your own without having to ask for help every 5 seconds. And that's the getting stuff done attitude I talked about in the beginning is, am I able to take care of my patients from the beginning of the shift to the end of the shift with very minimal assistance? Because if they have to help you and they have to hold your hand every 5 minutes, they're going to be like, we probably don't want this person to come back. We probably don't want this travel nurse, or we probably don't want this person floating to our facility, because they're going to feel like they're taking care of your patient versus you taking care of your patient. They're going to feel like, wow, like this felt really heavy. It felt like a heavy load. This person's depending on us a lot. So I'm not saying you can't ask questions, but I'm going to say that I would kind of like you pick and choose your battles. You pick and choose your questions. Sometimes you have to learn how to mind map things. You have to learn how to critically think on your own. You have to learn how to figure out some things on your own. Try to do everything you can do on your own before you take those questions to other people and say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z for my patient. Now, these are the places that I checked. I checked the supply closet, I checked here, I checked here, I checked there, and I didn't find it. Is there somewhere else I can check to possibly find said item? Or these are all the things that I tried to help my patient. I tried X, Y, and Z. Is there something that I didn't think of that you can think of that I, just running through things and critically thinking independently, because it's going to make you a stronger nurse. It's going to make you not necessarily depend on other people to take care of your patients. But it's also going to help you as a clear communicator, because you are communicating to whoever you're asking for help that you've tried everything that you can on your own. You've fully extended your resources and to the best of your knowledge and your ability, and now you need help. And that goes a long way, so people know that you're not just depending on them to do things for you. You're not just depending on them to take care of your patients for you, but you're willing to put in the work. But sometimes you need assistance, and you can clearly communicate what it is that you need to that person. So those things all make a really big difference, and those things are also going to make you a strong travel nurse, because once again, travel nursing is just the extended version of floating, okay? So when you float from your original hospital that you work in and you float to another unit, or you float to another hospital, that's a 12-hour shift of floating. Sometimes you may get 2 shifts in a row that you picked up, and that's 212 that you pick up. But travel nursing is the extended version of that. It's that times a 4-week, 5-week, 13-week contract. I even saw some 26-week contracts. That's a long time, but you get the gist of it. It is the exact same thing as floating, except long term. So in other words, you're going to go in there with the idea of, hey, I'm floating to this unit. I'm getting the meat and potatoes in. I'm learning this place as fast as I can, as efficiently as I can, because I'm here for the long haul. However long that long haul is, if that makes sense. So when you're doing it, when you're floating, it's a 12-hour shift, and you kind of can make up your mind of, okay, I really like it here, or I don't like it here, and I'm not going to come back. When you take a travel contract, you're there for the extent of that contract. So you got to stick with it for the long haul. So these are just things to think about that are going to really help you to become a stronger travel nurse. And to help you to work more independently, to be a better team member when you arrive, because that's ultimately what you want to be. You want to be a solid team member. You don't want to feel like the third wheel that they have to carry. You don't want to feel like a burden on them, because you are essentially there to help. And another thing that most people don't want to talk about, but it's, the elephant in the room, is that as a travel nurse, or even as a per diem nurse, as an agency nurse, whatever your state or city calls it, you are getting paid more than the nurses there who work their staff. So they definitely don't want to be holding your hand. They definitely don't want to feel like you are the burden, like they have to carry you when you're already getting paid more than them. And they sometimes they're going to be mean. They're going to be nasty. They're not going to want to work with you. They're not going to want to be like, oh, hi, welcome. Sometimes you're going to get the cold shoulder, and sometimes they're going to be rude to you. So you really have to have this level of independence of, I can be dropped down in the middle of any hospital and I can figure out how to function for the most part. Once again, not to a point where it's toxic, where you don't want to ask questions when you really do need to ask questions, but you want to be as self-sufficient as possible, you guys. And that's honestly why I loved my experience of floating. I feel like it really did prepare me when it was time to travel nurse. I was like, oh, I got this. This is the same thing I did, just an extended amount of time, where I'm going to be here for the long haul, and they're going to get to know me and I'm going to get to know them. It's not just a 12-hour shift. But it ended up being a 10-week shift type of situation. So one last thing that I would like to mention, I mentioned it in my Floating 101 video, but it is to have a small notebook. Now, when I was floating, I used this notebook because, like I said, your orientation to the floor, to the unit, is going to be quick, down and dirty. And you want to write everything down because you want to be as independent as possible, right? You don't want to have to ask for the code every single time you go into the supply room, because you're going to be going in and out of there 155 million times, right? So I always recommend that whether you're floating or you are a new travel nurse, that you keep a small notepad. Now, I purchased mine at the dollar store. Sometimes they have like a pack of small spiral notebooks. They're like maybe like this big, and they'll have like 3 for $1. They don't have to be anything fancy. It just has to be small enough where you can write stuff down really quickly and you can slide it in your pocket so you have easy access to it. Now, your first day, especially I would say while you're getting your tour of the unit, you want to keep that notebook handy, and either the very first page or the very last page of that notebook, you want to write down every single room, that requires a code to get in, you want to write the code down. You want to write down the important phone numbers. Like if you know that you have to dial 959 to get to RT, you want to write that number down. If there's a code that you have to dial out of the hospital or to dial the other side of the hospital, you want to write that down. Any important phone numbers, codes, what else? Procedures. If there's a procedure that you have to do, there's 1, 2, 3 steps and you have to do it in that order, you want to write that down. Anything that's going to be important, a quick reference. That is essentially what this notebook is. It is a quick reference notebook, and you want to make sure that notebook is in your pocket, easily accessible, where you can grab it and you can flip it open. Every hospital does things different. Some of them you use your badge to get into anything and everything, but some of them still have the old school codes where you have to punch the codes in. You do not want to have to ask your coworkers and teammates every single time you have to go in there to grab simple things like chuck pads or 2x2, 4x4s, whatever the case may be. You want to be as independent as possible. You want to minimize the amount of questions you have to ask, and you want them to be good, solid questions when you have to ask questions. So do yourself a favor, get yourself a cheap little quick reference notebook and stick it in your pocket. And anytime there's something, for example, if you don't know where to find what's something I had to ask? Oh, I know how to find labs, but how do I find what the blood sugar is that I just did? I don't know where to find that in the record. If someone has to show me how to do something, I'm going to write that down in that quick reference notebook because it's something that I didn't previously know, but I'm going to have to get to it again. I know I'm going to take blood sugars again literally at the end of the shift, and I don't want to have to ask somebody how to find it. So keeping that notebook in your pocket is going to make you so much more independent. You're going to be able to quickly reference all of those things. Additionally, if I'm teaching somebody something and they're writing it down, that means to me that it's valuable information to them, but it means something to them because they're willing to take that extra 5 seconds to write it down so that they don't have to ask again. And I think that really shows a level of independence, and it shows a level of you really trying your best at this facility, and it puts a really good an extension out there where people are like, wow, okay, she's really dedicated, he's really dedicated, they really want to be here, they're really trying to learn, and they're going to want to help you even more if they see that you're trying. So put that extra effort forth, keep that notebook. I promise you it'll make your life so much easier, you guys. That's something that I would definitely add to your skill set. All right, you guys, thanks again for watching. As always, I hope this video was a blessing to you guys. I hope that this inspires you to step out of your comfort zone, float to another unit, try something new, float to another hospital, try agency work. Whatever it is that fulfills you, step out of your comfort zone and try something new today. And if you have floated, let me know one trick or tip that you use that helps you in your floating experience or travel nursing experience. Something you can share for those who have not floated or tried travel nursing yet. Thanks again, you guys. Have a good one.